Hi everyone, I'm Arya from Susan's family. Today, I'm going to show you how to make a cute little explorer backpack, the bear style. For this electronic pattern, you can search for en.susudiy.com on the website. The bag consists of the main part, accessories and decorations. Start by learning how to crochet the main part, which consists of the base, the body and the flap. First, we'll crochet the base. It starts with a foundation chain. Crochet in rounds counterclockwise along the foundation chain. You'll need to change colors and attach the grid board during the crocheting process. Before we start, let's familiarize ourselves with the chart. In the chart, our ND plus number indicates the round number. Row plus number represents the row number. The column for stitch instructions shows the stitches will be used in the current round, including any increases or decreases. The total stitches column shows the total number of stitches for the current round. When it's complete, this bag is entirely crocheted with X stitch single crochet, which will be referred to as single crochets in the following video. There are various stitches used in the chart. They're all clearly marked on the chart. I won't go through them all. Please watch me demonstrate the specific crochet technique. First, make a foundation chain. Take out the corresponding yarn. For better visibility, I'll use random colors for the swatch. For specific yarn, color combinations, and hook size, please refer to the corresponding product detail page and the paper pattern. First, make the required number of foundation chains. Please refer to the chart for the specific stitch counts. After that, start crocheting the first round. Start from the second CH from the hook. V indicates SC2 in 1. Insert the hook into the top loop of the second chain from the hook. Work at SC2 in 1. That means crocheting 2 single crochets into the same stitch. Note that we'll work with the X stitch single crochets. Place your hook above the yarn. Pull the yarn through. Yarn over. Pull through the 2 loops on the hook. 1. 2. A SC2 in 1 is complete. Then, work a single crochet into the top loop of the next chain on the left side. Continue working a single crochet into each of the top loop of the following chains on the left. Keep going until you have only one chain left. Reach the corresponding position. Now, there's just one last chain left. Here, work at SC3 in 1. That means crocheting 3 single crochets into the same stitch. 1. 2. 3. The SC3 in 1 is complete. Then rotate the fabric piece. You can see that there are still 2 strands left at the chain stitch positions on this side. Continue by picking up these 2 strands to crochet. That means working in the same stitch placement as on the previous side. Be careful not to insert into the same insertion point as the 3 single crochets. When crocheting this side, place the starting yarn tail above the hook. Weave in the ends as you go. Finish crocheting all the remaining stitches. Crochet the last stitch into the beginning position, that is the insertion point of the SA2-in-1. After finishing, check the number of stitches. Then, insert the hook into the first stitch and work a slip stitch. The slip stitch is complete. The joining slip stitch doesn't count as one stitch, hence, it's not marked in the chart. When crocheting in rounds, unless otherwise specified, always join with a slip stitch at the end of each round, and pull tight. So, the first round is complete. Now, crochet the second round. Make 1 beginning chain. Similarly, the beginning chain of single crochet doesn't count as a stitch. It's not marked in the chart. When crocheting in rounds, unless otherwise specified, always start each round with a beginning chain. And the beginning chain of single crochet doesn't count as a stitch. This won't be mentioned again later. Then, crochet 2 SC2-in-1s. After that, work the corresponding number of single crochets. That means, work until the right side of the SC3-in-1 from the previous round. When you reach the correct position, work 3 SC2-in-1s. Continue working the corresponding number of single crochets. When done, work 1 SC2-in-1. Then, join with a slip stitch to the first stitch. Pull tight. So, round 2 is complete. Now, move on to round 3. Make 1 beginning chain. In the chart, you'll see XV times 2. The parentheses here indicate a group of stitches. Multiply by a number indicates how many times to repeat the group. Here, it means to repeat the stitches within the parentheses twice. Start by working 1 single crochet. Then, work a SC2-in-1 in the next stitch on the left. So we've finished one group of stitches within the parentheses. Let me demonstrate again. First, make one single crochet, followed by one SC2 in 1. This is the second time. Keep going until you finish the round. After finishing, join with a slip stitch to the first stitch. Pull tight. So, the third round is done. Let's take a look. The side with clear texture is the right side, whereas the side with blurry texture is the wrong side. When you crochet, always keep the right side facing you. When counting rounds, you can count these raised textures as your guide. Continue following the chart. Crochet from round 4 to round 7. For the 8th round, work evenly, without increasing or decreasing. That means picking up the stitches from the previous round. Work one single crochet in each stitch. Remember to start each round with a beginning chain. Finish each round by joining with a slip stitch. After completing the 8th round, cut a piece of grid board along the outer edge of the fabric for later use. Then, let's see how to cut the grid board. Once done, cut the grid board. Place the fabric on top of the grid board. Align the edges. Cut a length of scrap yarn and thread it onto a sewing needle. Roughly secure the fabric in place. Make sure to press the fabric flat while securing. Then, cut the grid board along the edge of the fabric. Be careful not to cut the yarn. At the curved sections, allow the grid board to extend slightly beyond the fabric. Trim the edges as smoothly as possible. Then, remove the securing yarn. The grid board has been cut to size. Set it aside for later use. After cutting the grid board to size, refer to the chart and continue crocheting from rounds 9 to 14. After completing round 14, join with a slip stitch to the first single crochet. I'm demonstrating with a swatch here. Since we're changing colors for the next round, let's secure the yarn tail here. Pull up the loop. Pass the ball of yarn or the fabric through the loop. Pull tight. Don't cut the yarn yet. We've finished securing the yarn tail. Move on to crochet round 15. Take out the corresponding yarn. Tie a slip knot at the yarn end. Hold the yarn with your left hand. Insert the hook into the first stitch of the previous round. Draw the loop through. Color change completed. Make one beginning chain. Then work one single crochet in the same stitch. When you crochet, weave in the starting tail. Chain 1. Skip 1 stitch. Work 2 single crochets. That completes one group. Let me demonstrate another group. Work 1 single crochet. Chain 1. Skip 1 stitch. Work 2 single crochets. Follow this pattern. Refer to the chart. Finish this round. After finishing, join with a slip stitch to the first single crochet. Don't cut the yarn yet. Secure the yarn tail. So, round 15 is complete. Now, let's work on round 16. Pick up the yarn tail from round 14. Hold the yarn with your left hand. Insert the hook into the first stitch of round 15. Draw the yarn through. Make one beginning chain. Work one single crochet in the same stitch. Then crochet another single crochet. The red X in the chart indicates this single crochet should be worked into an unused single crochet from round 14. When you crochet, wrap the chain stitch from round 15, followed by 2 single crochets. I'll work one more group. Work one single crochet. The red X indicates working into an unused single crochet from round 14. While crocheting, wrap the chain stitch from round 15. Then work 2 single crochets. Keep going until you complete this round. After finishing, join with a slip stitch to the first single crochet. Fasten off the yarn. Round 16 is now complete. At the same time, the base is also complete. Once the base is done, sew the pre-cut grid board inside the fabric. Now, please watch the method for sewing the grid board. I'll demonstrate how to sew the grid board using a sample. Cut a piece of yarn identical to the main part, about 50 centimeters long. Thread it onto a sewing needle. Keep the side with raised texture of the grid board facing up. Place it inside the main part. Align it and fit with the first 6 rounds. First, secure the middle of the grid board to the starting position. Tie a knot at one end of the grid board. Then begin sewing. Be mindful of adjusting the position as needed. Keep the yarn segments on the fabric as short as possible. Pull tight. Try to minimize visible stitching marks on the surface. After sewing the middle section along the edge of the grid board, aligning with the stitches of the 6th round, sew them together. Exit the needle below a small horizontal line. Try to pass through complete squares on the grid board. Once a round is completed, if you find any areas not lying flat, secure them further. Tie a knot when done. Weave in the yarn tail along the fabric's texture. You can weave in a few more stitches. Cut the excess yarn tail. Similarly, weave in the starting yarn tail. Finish it on your own. Thus, the grid board is now attached by sewing. Now, let's start crocheting the first round of the body. Take the yarn end from round 15 of the base. Hold the yarn with your left hand. Insert your hook into the first stitch of the previous round. Draw the yarn through. Make a beginning chain. Let's take a look first. There are 2 strands of yarn in this stitch. The one closer to you is the front loop. The other one is the back loop. For this entire round, pick up the back loop only. Crochet single crochets. Once you're done, join with a slip stitch to the first stitch. Pull tight. Don't cut the yarn. Then, crochet rounds 2 through 26. Work evenly, without increasing or decreasing. Just pick up the stitches and crochet them normally. You can crochet these rounds by yourself. After completing round 26, start crocheting round 27. Make 1 beginning chain. Work 2 single crochets. Chain 2. Skip 2 stitches. Crochet 6 single crochets. These 2 chain stitches are for the drawstring hole. Refer to the chart. Keep going until you finish this round. After finishing, join with a slip stitch to the first stitch. Then make 1 beginning chain. Begin crocheting the 28th round. At the single crochet position, work a single crochet correspondingly. In the chain space, crochet 2 single crochets. Keep going until you finish this round. When done, join with a slip stitch to the first stitch. Don't pull the slip stitch tight. Pull up the loop. Leave a yarn tail about 5 centimeters long before cutting the yarn. Then, proceed with an invisible fasten off. Insert the hook under the second stitch from the left. Then, bring it back through the loop where the yarn tail is. Adjust the tension slightly. Fastening off like this, there won't be any visible slip stitch marks on the surface. Weave in the yarn tail neatly on the wrong side. And that completes the body of the bag. Next, let's crochet the flap. We'll begin with the foundation chain. First, crochet in rows. After completing the corresponding number of rows, then along the finished fabric, crochet in rounds. You'll need to change colors during the process. Please watch the demonstration. First, make the required number of chains. Please refer to the chart for the specific stitch counts. Once the foundation chain is complete, crochet row 1. Begin working single crochets in the second chain from the hook. Finish this row. After finishing, place a stitch marker on this row. If you don't have stitch markers, you can use a safety pin or paper clip as a substitute, or you can use a piece of yarn to mark it. The side with the stitch marker will be the right side of the flap, and that completes the first row. Now let's move on to the second row. Make 1 turning chain. Then turn the work over. Work single crochets. And that finishes the second row. Rows 3 through 16 are worked in the same way as the second row. For rows 17 to 26, some rows will require increasing stitches as you crochet. In row 27, you'll use SC2 tog. It's recommended to learn the SC2 tog technique first, before working on row 27. For the X stitch SC2 tog, insert the hook into the stitch on the left. Place the hook above the yarn. Draw the yarn through. This is an incomplete X stitch single crochet. Then, insert the hook into the next stitch. Again, place the hook above the yarn. Pull the yarn through. You've now completed 2 incomplete X stitch single crochets. Now, you'll have 3 loops on your hook. Yarn over. Pull through all 3 loops on the hook. The X stitch SC2 tog is now complete. This is how you work the X-stitch SC2 tog. After finishing working row 27, start crocheting in rounds for the first round. Make 1 beginning chain. Then, pick up 2 strands on the side. Work at SC2 in 1. Pick up the holes along the side. Crochet single crochets in sequence. Keep going until you've worked this entire side. After finishing crocheting this side, you've reached the starting position of the foundation chain. Pick up the remaining 2 strands of the first stitch from the foundation chain. Work at SC2 in 1. Then, work a single crochet in sequence for the following stitches. While crocheting, weave in the starting yarn tail. Continue crocheting until you reach the last stitch of the foundation chain. When the crocheting is complete, and you have reached the last stitch, work at SC2 in 1 at the last stitch. Then, continue picking up the holes along the side. Crochet single crochets in the holes. Keep going until you finish crocheting this entire side. When this side is completed, on row 27, at the first stitch, work at SC2 in 1. Then, in each of the following stitches, work a single crochet. Continue crocheting until you complete the row. After completing, join with a slip stitch to the first stitch. Change the color for the next round. Leave a yarn tail about 5 centimeters and fasten off the yarn. Weave in the ends. The first round is complete. Move on to the second round. Take out the corresponding yarn. Tie a slip knot at the yarn end. Hold the yarn with your left hand. Pick up the back loop of the first stitch from the previous round. Pull the loop through. Make 1 beginning chain. Work a single crochet. Continue picking up the following back loops. Crochet a single crochet in each corresponding stitch. Keep going until you complete this round. After finishing, join with a slip stitch to the first stitch. Secure the yarn tail. The second round is complete. Finally, work round 3. At the insertion point of the first stitch in the previous round, pull the yarn through. Then insert the hook into the insertion point of the second stitch. Work a slip stitch. Insert into the insertion point of the third stitch. Work another slip stitch. Continue working until you finish this round. After finishing, leave a yarn tail about 5 centimeters long and cut the yarn. Proceed with an invisible fasten off. Weave in the yarn tail neatly on the wrong side. So, we've finished crocheting the flap. Then, sew the flap onto the bag. First, let's determine the sewing position. Pinch the bag flat along the foundation chain of the base, with the side having slip stitch seam as the wrong side. Face it towards yourself. Position the foundation chain of the flap underneath, with the right side facing up. Place it on the back of the bag body. Align the first row of the flap with the fifth row from the bottom of the body. Place it in the middle of the bag body, on both sides where the flap overlaps with the body. Attach the stitch markers to secure the position. This side will be the back of the bag, while the other side is the front. Place the bag with the front facing you. Check if the flap is properly positioned. Adjust it if needed. Now, let's start sewing. Take out the corresponding yarn. Cut a piece of yarn about 1 meter long. Split it into 2 strands. Thread them onto a sewing needle. Tie both ends of the yarn together into a knot. Begin sewing along the inner edge of the last round of the flap. While sewing, be careful not to sew through the drawstring hole. After finishing, tie a knot and weave in the ends on the wrong side. Weave in the ends with a few more stitches. And that completes the flap. At the same time, we've covered the crocheting of the main part. Next, we'll crochet and attach the accessories, which include the drawstring opening, the drawstring, the handle strap, the shoulder straps and buttons. We'll crochet them first, then attach them later. Note that the shoulder straps and buttons are pre-made, so there's no needed to crochet them. Let's move on to the handle strap. We'll crochet it first, then attach it to the flap on the back of bag. The specific yarn color combinations and the length of the handle strap for crocheting are all marked on the chart. After finishing crocheting, proceed with the sewing. Please watch the demonstration. Now, let's learn how to crochet a Romanian cord. Start with a foundation chain. Chain 2. Then insert the hook into the top loop of the first chain. Yarn over. Pull the yarn through. Yarn over again, pull through both loops. Hold the hook stationary. Turn the lower fabric piece clockwise. Then, pick up these 2 strands like this. Yarn over, pull through. Yarn over again, pull through the loops on your hook. Continue turning the fabric piece clockwise. Pick up these 2 strands. Yarn over, work a single crochet. Continue turning the fabric piece clockwise. Pick up the same 2 strands again and work a single crochet. Keep repeating this method. Turn the fabric piece clockwise. Then, pick up the 2 vertical strands in the upper left and work a single crochet. Keep working until you reach the desired length. Chain 1 to secure. Leave a yarn tail. Cut the yarn. If you need to sew, leave a longer yarn tail. This is how you crochet the Romanian cord. After finishing crocheting, weave in the yarn tails on both ends. Take out the corresponding yarn. Split it into 2 strands. Thread them onto a sewing needle. I've got that ready here. Fold the handle strap in half. On the back of the bag, roughly in the middle at the bottom of the flap, align the 2 ends of the handle strap. Start sewing them in place. Once the sewing is done, from the sewn end, move upwards about 4 centimeters. Between rows 7 and 8 of the flap. Sew a few more stitches to secure it. When it's done, cut the excess yarn tail. And thus, the handle strap is complete. Now, let's make the drawstring opening. We'll start with a chain ring. Crochet in rounds counterclockwise. Please watch the demonstration. First, make the required number of chains. Please refer to the chart for the specific stitch counts. After completing the last chain, join with a slip stitch to the first chain. This is how it looks after completing the chain ring. Now, work the first round. Make a beginning chain. Then crochet the corresponding number of single crochets. As you crochet, weave in the starting chains and yarn tail together. Continue crocheting until the round is complete. When done, join with a slip stitch to the first single crochet. The first round is complete. Move on to the second round. Make one beginning chain. Then, pick up the stitches from the previous round. Work a single crochet in each corresponding stitch. When finished, join with a slip stitch to the first single crochet. The second round is now complete. Rounds 3 and 4 are worked the same way as the second round. You can crochet these on your own. After finishing, join with a slip stitch. Don't pull it tight. Proceed with an invisible fasten off. Leave a yarn tail about 15 centimeters long before cutting the yarn. The technique for fastening off is the same as for the last round of the body. And there, the drawstring opening is complete. Now, let's make the drawstring. We'll use double chain rope to crochet. The specific color combinations and the length of the drawstring for crocheting are all marked on the chart. Follow the chart and the video demonstration to crochet. Please watch the demonstration. Now, I'll demonstrate how to crochet the double chain rope. Leave a yarn tail about 3 times the length of the desired drawstring at the front. Hold the yarn with your left hand. Make sure to keep the yarn tail hanging below. Tie a knot first. Then, bring the yarn tail from front to back and place it on the hook. Yarn over. Pull the yarn through both loops on the hook. The first stitch is complete. Again, bring the lower yarn tail from front to back and put it on the hook. Continue crocheting. Yarn over. Pull the yarn through. Continue repeating the process. Until you reach the desired length. Leave a yarn tail. Cut the yarn. If you need to sew, leave a longer yarn tail. After finishing, thread the end with the yarn tail onto a sewing needle. Tie a knot on the other end. First, thread a wooden bead. Then, from the front of the bag, thread the needle through a reserved hole on the left of the body. Then out through the next hole. Alternate threading the needle through all the holes. Finally, thread the needle out through a hole on the right of the front of the bag. Then, thread another wooden bead. Weave in the ends. After finishing, tie a knot at the other end of the drawstring. Pick up the drawstring opening piece. Keep the side with the foundation chain facing up. Thread both ends of the drawstring, along with the wooden beads, through the drawstring opening. Finally, use the reserved yarn tail from the drawstring opening. Separate the drawstrings to both sides. Sew a few stitches along the middle. Be careful not to sew through the drawstring while sewing. Once the sewing is complete, weave in the ends. Up to this point, we've covered how to make the drawstring. Next, let's sew the shoulder straps. Before sewing, check the sewing position. Sew it onto the back of the bag. Locate the last round of the base on the longer single crochet in the middle. Place a marker. Count 3 longer single crochets separately towards each side. Place markers as well. The markers on both sides indicate where the shoulder straps will be sewn. Take out the shoulder straps. Both ends have D-rings like these. You can remove the D-rings for easier sewing. Use the same color yarn as the last round of the base. To sew, let's start with this one. There's no specific sewing method required. Just make sure it's secure. After sewing securely, thread the yarn tail into the bag. Pass the yarn tail through a few times to weave it in. Like this, one end of the shoulder strap is now sewn up. Use the same method to sew up the other one. Once the sewing is complete, pass the shoulder strap through the handle strap. Then, fasten both ends to D-rings. So we've finished sewing up the shoulder straps. Now, let's sew on the buttons, which include 2 mushroom buttons and 2 magnetic snap buttons. Sew the mushroom buttons on top of the flap, between the last 2 rows. Sew them symmetrically on both sides. A magnetic snap button consists of a male and a female part. Sew the male part below the mushroom button, on the wrong side of the flap. Sew the female part on the second to last round of the body, just below the drawstring hole. Make sure it aligns with the corresponding male part. Let's start by sewing on the mushroom button. Take out the corresponding color yarn. Split 2 strands for sewing. I've got that ready here. Take out the mushroom button. Position the button above the fabric piece. Locate the gap in the fabric where you'll sew. Press firmly. Push it through the fabric. Just like this. Sew it on the wrong side. And now the mushroom button is securely sewn on this side. Repeat the sewing process for the other side. Next, sew on the male part. Sew it below the mushroom button, right in the middle. The male part is now securely sewn on this side. Repeat the sewing process for the other side. Finally, sew on the female part. You can use the flap to cover the bag properly, and check if the position is suitable. Once the position is set, proceed with sewing. Repeat the sewing process for the other side. And now, the buttons are all sewn on.